From historic devastation
The trees on the campus were absolutely destroyed.
to learning from tragedy,
The ocean is the vast majority of Earth, right? And so it's this huge area to cover, yet it's one of the harshest environments on Earth, and you need to measure it across a long time.
and using the tools to help keep you safe.
We want to give the most real-world-like feeling in here.
Hurricanes are more extreme, but our ability to predict these storms is now life-changing. The 2023 hurricane season is at its peak, and the Carolinas know as well as anyone the devastation it can bring to our area. Hello and welcome to a pinpoint weather special from coast to crown on Carolina's own Queen City News. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tara Lane.
And I'm meteorologist Ted Phaeton. Hurricanes are a global phenomenon that date back thousands of years, but official records of these storms only date back a couple centuries. For the next 30 minutes, we'll take a deep dive into how our better understanding of these storms allow us to deliver more accurate forecasts when you need it the most.
And as history has taught us, the Queen City is no exception to these coastal storms. September 22nd marks 34 years since Hurricane Hugo devastated Charlotte and surrounding areas, leaving a lasting impact on the people who lived through the disaster. It's a feeling many of our communities have endured over the years, and meteorologist Andrew Brightman gives us a history lesson on the most devastating storms to hit the Carolinas.
In just the past 20 years, we've seen over a dozen named storms make their imprint in North and South Carolina. Florence, Dorian, and Matthew, just to name a few, but there have been 5 infamous hurricanes in the past century that have shaped the fabric of how the Carolinas prepare for these storms today. We're going to start with Hurricane Floyd. It's the last hurricane in the 20th century to make landfall in the Carolinas. 155 miles per hour at its peak, triggering the 4th largest evacuation in U.S. history. Floyd did weaken to a Category 2 when it made landfall near Cape Fear, but still caused over $6 billion worth of damage and took the lives of 85 people. A lot of that was due to heavy flooding. As you can see, about 2 feet of rain was dumped across eastern North Carolina. Rescue crews had to perform nearly 1,700 water rescues of people trapped on the roof. Next, moving on back to Hurricane Fran in 1996. This was actually the last major hurricane to make landfall in the Carolinas 27 years ago. Fran hit the Southport area as a Category 3 hurricane. Wind gusts reached upwards of 124 miles per hour. This is an example of a coastal storm having an inland impact. After first hitting the southeast, Fran made its way up to the Raleigh area, damaging historic landmarks, including its university. Storm damage forced UNC Chapel Hill to cancel classes for a week due to a lack of clean drinking water. Number 3, we're going to go back to 1959 to Hurricane Gracie. It made landfall in the low country of South Carolina as a Category 4 hurricane. 10 people lost their lives, but one of the saving graces with Gracie was the fact that it made landfall near Hilton Head Island before it was built up. Its impact was a driving factor to properly nourish the beach area to become the thriving community it is today. But 5 years prior, another disastrous storm wreaked havoc on the coast, and that was Hurricane Hazel back in 1954, made a landfall as a Category 4 storm near the North and South Carolina border. This is after it devastated the island of Haiti, taking the lives of nearly 1,000 people. When Hazel hit the Carolinas, weather analysts said all traces of civilization from the state line in Cape Fear were practically, quote, annihilated. A big factor was its 18-foot storm surge. That would be the highest until 1989, when another H-named storm that needs no introduction made landfall in South Carolina. That is, of course, Hurricane Hugo, and the storm started off as a traditional African wave before eventually getting up to a Category 5 storm out in the central Atlantic. It did over $8 billion worth of damage. 50 people lost their lives due to Hurricane Hugo. Now, the storm also did major impacts across Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and from there, the storm actually did weaken down to a Category 2, but from there, the storm re-intensified as it made its way towards the South Carolina coast before making landfall near Sullivan's Island as a 135-mile-per-hour Category 4 storm. Upwards of 120-mile-per-hour sustained winds were recorded at the Sandpit River. We saw upwards of 10 inches of rain from this storm, but the biggest impact The 20-foot storm tide that we saw from Hugo remains to this day the highest storm tide ever recorded on the East Coast. Now, from there, Hurricane Hugo continued to make its way inland and eventually pushed its way into the Central Carolinas and into the Charlotte area. And we saw wind gusts over 90 miles an hour because we were on the right front quadrant of this storm as it moved through late in September of 1989. You can see some of the damage, all the down power lines. We saw over 3 inches of rain here in Charlotte before finally the storm cleared out of the Carolinas, heading off to the north into Canada, and it was left up to the people of the Carolinas to dig out and recover from what was the strongest storm ever to make landfall in either North and South Carolina, Hurricane Hugo, back on September 22nd, 1989.
Now, the most powerful hurricane to hit the U.S. during this season so far was Hurricane Idalia. It made landfall as a Category 3 just south of Perry, Florida on August 30th. Idalia caused severe damage along Florida's Big Bend area before making its way up the Carolina coast, bringing heavy rain and multiple tornadoes. Now, forecasters knew from the very beginning that Idalia would likely grow into a dangerous hurricane as the area of low pressure drifted from the Caribbean Sea into the Gulf of Mexico. It fed off extremely warm sea surface temperatures, generally low wind shear, and high humidity levels. Idalia formed from an area of low pressure that started over the Pacific Ocean, moved over Central America before pushing into the Gulf of Mexico. And then on August 26th, it organized into that tropical depression.
Yeah, and things happened pretty quickly after that. After it organized into a tropical depression, it then became a tropical storm, officially Tropical Storm Idalia. And the fears of a powerful hurricane then came true through the Gulf of Mexico as Idalia rapidly strengthened into a Category 4 hurricane before making landfall as a Category 3 on August 30th. It weakened as it moved overland up through the Carolina coast, which we typically see with these storms.
That's right. And then it pushed east into the Atlantic, losing its tropical characteristics as it headed toward Bermuda. At least 10 people were killed in incidents related from the storm, from Florida to the Carolinas to as far north as Delaware and New Jersey.
Now, we've been able to track the formation of Idalia thanks to the development of new technology that allows us to take a look inside the eye of the storm. I spoke with experts who broke down how exactly they're able to collect this life-changing data. The unforgiving seas, a barren desert of water increasing in temperatures and driving our global weather.
This year actually has been exceptionally warm throughout the global ocean.
NOAA oceanographer Greg Fultz explains the impacts a warming ocean has on tropical systems and global weather patterns. Sea surface temperatures have seen just over half a degree Celsius increase over the past 4 decades, or just over 1 degree Fahrenheit. Small hinges swing big doors, and the same can be said for the 100-foot layer of ocean water that feeds these tropical systems.
We know that's important for hurricane intensification because they mix up colder water, and if there's more warmer water at depth, then they're mixing up warmer water than they normally would.
Sea surface temperatures above 80 degrees Fahrenheit drive the development of tropical storms. The warmer the water, the more potent the fuel. With tropical cyclones accounting for the most death and destruction compared to any other weather disaster in U.S. history, scientists are constantly working to build a better understanding of how they happen.
We have new things like uncrewed systems, drones in the atmosphere deployed into hurricanes, on the surface of the ocean, measuring continuously, and in the ocean, floats and drifters in the ocean, measuring the subsurface.
Easiest to envision sort of an uncrewed sailboat that is being operated and piloted autonomously, remotely from people sitting on shore.
Senior Director of Ocean Data Programs at Saildrone, Matt Womble, explains the unique problem the U.S.-based company is equipped to solve. Their fleet of uncrewed surface ocean observation platforms are powered by renewable energy, allowing them to operate for months, if not years at a time.
The ocean is the vast majority of Earth, right? And so it's this huge area to cover, yet it's one of the harshest environments on Earth, and you need to measure it across long time series.
Confidence has grown when it comes to tracking tropical cyclones, but predicting intensity can still pose a challenge. With the ability to steer and direct these drones in the path of active storms, researchers can collect real-time data, giving them a minute-by-minute look into how these storms intensify.
I mean, you can imagine being in a coastal area and one night going to sleep thinking you're going to have a Category 1 storm and waking up the next morning and you're staring down the barrel of a Category 4 storm.
It's called rapid intensification, and we've seen it as recently as Hurricane Idalia. With a fleet of unmanned sail drones navigating the 7 seas, we can peel back the layers into how warm sea surface temperatures help these storms mature.
It takes all these measurements, all this data, and to track what's going on and hopefully improve forecasts and our understanding of what's happening.
Better understanding leads to better forecasting, which in turn can save lives and protect property in the years to come.
So sort of across the board, it's that idea of being able to monitor the ocean at scale, large spatial areas across long time periods to help inform how the ocean is driving global weather patterns.
And as technology helps us track these storms, so does our ability to limit its impact. Coming up, the year-round research to storm-proof your home.
The trees on the campus were absolutely destroyed.
A college campus devastated, only to be picked back up by its students. The mission to restore what Hurricane Hugo left behind. Major hurricanes like Hugo, Andrew, and Katrina not only rewrite history books, but they reshape communities.
Now, though the damage left behind is a sign of the storm's strength, it could also be a warning of poor infrastructure.
Meteorologist and climate specialist Elisa Raffa met with researchers working to help us build better for the future.
Science tells us hurricanes are becoming more extreme. Supercharged by warmer air and steamier ocean waters, they can drop more heavy rain and send in more destructive storm surge. One research facility right in our backyard works year-round to update our building codes to help us rebuild resilient for the next storm. It happens all too often. A destructive hurricane rushes water in, peels off roofs, topples homes, and changes lives forever. But this type of destruction can change lives for the better. You're looking at a wall of 105 powerful fans, so powerful, up to 350 horsepower, can simulate winds up to 130 miles per hour. That's near Category 3 hurricane strength. It helps the researchers here get a little bit of taste of what Mother Nature could do, but inside their lab.
We've got a lot of them, and for good reason.
Those 6 by 6 foot wind turbines simulate the eye of the storm at the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety.
We want to give the most real-world-like feeling in here.
Cutting-edge research uses full-scale models of our homes and mimics real-world conditions to test hurricane resilience. Sarah Dillingham is the senior meteorologist at the facility right in our backyard in South Carolina.
What we're looking at are how are buildings put together? How are those individual components pieced together, and how are they installed? Are they installed properly? Because sometimes all that matters is those proper connections, whether that be your roof to your walls or your walls to your foundation.
Her team tests entry points for wind, using real wind observations from hurricanes making landfall, and even rotating the homes on a turntable to simulate a spinning storm.
For hurricanes, we know that the wind may be coming at multiple sides of the building for a long duration. And so we're also looking at the component failures and the fatigue of some of those components as well.
Hurricanes often pack a punch with rain. These sprayers can hose the home with water that rushes in with the Category 3 force winds.
It can be equivalent to about 8 inches per hour of wetting onto a structure. So we can really get those rainfall rates very similar to what you might experience in a real hurricane.
One of the most common vulnerabilities in the home is the garage doors.
Garage doors have been identified as a large vulnerability in regards to allowing wind into the home that can then cause a cascade of failures.
Another point of entry for damage is the roof. It's often the first line of defense for any home.
We are watching the building codes, the modern building codes in action play a role to stop the loss that we're seeing.
This is the kind of resilience IBHS research works to bring to states farther inland. Because surprisingly,
and I think that when you say something is built to code, sometimes we take that for granted.
Not every state has a mandated building code.
I look at a new home that I may have just purchased and was like, oh, well, this is everything I wanted. Of course it was built to code or it couldn't be here, but we're not asking the question, what code was in place? How old is the code? How well is it enforced here?
These questions help educate all communities and ensure we are building right at the most pivotal time. Billion-dollar disasters have increased fivefold since the 1980s. Where we used to see 20 separate billion-dollar disasters in a decade, we are now seeing them in just 1 year. Each of the last 4 years have all had more than 15 separate billion-dollar disasters. This year has already broken the record and claimed the top spot with 23 disasters so far. The average number of disasters in a year is just 7. As these disasters increase, the time to recover between them is decreasing significantly. Rebuilding resilient is more important now than ever before.
Hopefully that we will use those opportunities where these disasters are very unfortunate, but we use those as educational and learning opportunities to build better for the next time.
And while we always hope there is never a next time,
that was my house.
Science tells us hurricanes are becoming slower, wetter, and more intense.
We want to break the cycle of damage.
And the best way to prevent extreme loss,
when we do it the second time around, let's use those opportunities to build stronger,
is to rebuild resilient.
Now, it's not just our homes and businesses that need to be resilient. Our aging power grid needs to be ready for more extreme hurricanes. In the last 3 years, more than 80% of our major power outages were blamed on extreme weather. A study done by Climate Central ranks North Carolina near the top for the most weather-related power outages in recent decades. I got a tour of Duke Energy's research and development facility that works to find the smartest and most efficient ways to fuel our power grid. Self-healing or self-automated technology helps workers find the cause of outages faster. Adding more energy sources to the grid like wind and solar not only will be cleaner for the environment, but makes our grid more reliable during extreme weather. Battery storage research is another crucial part to the resilient power grid. Better batteries will help communities store up energy for future use during outages. Innovation and research at facilities like IBHS and Duke highlight that mitigation and adaptation are key. With 4 months still to go in the year, 2023 already broke the record for the most billion-dollar disasters in a year.
It was really a week or more of walking around campus in a state of disbelief.
Banding together in a time of crisis. Next, the collective effort by a local college to pick up after Hugo's devastation. On September 22nd, 1989, Hurricane Hugo made its way up from the South Carolina coast and devastated the city of Charlotte and its surrounding communities.
Downed trees and power lines on top of damaged homes was just part of what neighbors endured. But they came together in a time where it was needed most.
Queen City News reporter John Lee shares how the students of Davidson College came together to restore their beloved campus.
Since before the Civil War, folks at Davidson College have had a heightened awareness of the towering natural beauty there. In 1986, Davidson became a national arboretum, and 3 years later, Hurricane Hugo struck. No one was injured and most campus buildings were not severely damaged, but Davidson was devastated. John Kirkendall was president of the college back then.
The trees on the campus were absolutely destroyed. This was an enormous tree in the front yard of the president's house.
Hugo violently wiped out 230 trees, including some with huge nostalgic value. Doug Hicks was a senior when Hugo tore through the landscape. He's the current president of Davidson College.
It was really a week or more of walking around campus in a state of disbelief.
After Hugo, power on campus was out for a week. That's when nearly 1,500 students, as well as faculty members, came together to help clean up. Kirkendall called it the epitome of Davidson's spirit.
All of a sudden, here were these young people who were out not waiting to be given directions or given encouragement or anything else. They were out doing the things they knew they could do. They were picking up branches. They were loading the trucks with branches.
And we literally formed human brigades to move brush away to help the emergency crews. That was a major commitment of the Davidson community. And I think for all of us, faculty, staff, neighbors, students, it's an indelible memory of like what Davidson means to us.
And the response to Hugo exemplifies the sense of togetherness that's deeply rooted in Davidson tradition.
It was Davidson community defined.
At Davidson College, John Lee, Queen City News.
Now, any tree in your backyard can cause major damage to your home if exposed to high winds, but arborists say keeping your tree healthy is the key to prevent it.
The first thing is to identify the type of tree. The Carolina pine is the most common that's found at your home, but it's most prone to high winds due to its shallow roots.
Once you know this, prune away any tree or branch touching your house. The close proximity to your home is close enough to cause damage.
And lastly, get rid of any dead wood. You can identify a dead branch by its absence of leaves and how easy it is to break. Now, if you believe an entire tree is compromised, hire an arborist for a complete inspection.
We're approaching the end of hurricane season, but it's not over yet. The final stretch of what's been an active 2023 season. As the remnants of Lee impact parts of New England and Canada, we're reminded that the peak of hurricane season is upon us.
And we've still got 2 more months to go. Hurricane season officially ends on November 30th.
Well, that's going to do it for our Pinpoint Weather Special.
Stay with us through the rest of hurricane season and beyond for the most accurate forecasts when you need it. With Andrew and Elisa, I'm Ted Phaeton.
And I'm Tara Lane. Thank you for watching.